To another edition of the Rockpile Report podcast. I'm your host, Bill, season ticket holder Drew Gear. That's my producer, Chris Kruger. We ran into a few technical difficulties and still managed to, beat the 5-minute mark?
Yes.
God.
Beat the 5-minute mark.
Chris, we are professionals. Regardless of what our parents or anybody who shows up to watch me berate a guest might think. Yes. Mark Sullivan in the comments. I love that you came back for another taste of the Rockpile Report podcast. I promise you, I won't be stifling my guest this evening because I don't have one. That's the beauty of narcissism, right? If you don't have anybody riding shotgun with you, you can't step all over them.
No, the one way to look at our podcast, Mark, 3 terms: whiskey, free time, and Google. That's how we operate this show. Drew's got some thoughts. Well, I've got a little bit of whiskey and free time. And I have Google. We'll research them. I wanted to start with, I gave you 2 Glencairns. I went to the, as you can see, we have new camera angles here. And I was getting irritated yesterday that I couldn't get what I wanted. And I needed a break. So I went to the liquor store and I found this. This is Seelbach Wheated 107 proof. Where else have you heard a wheated 107 proof bourbon? Okay. So it's like an everyday, readily available comp to Weller, which you can't find. So I have in your glass, you have both of them. So what we're going to do is see if you can pick out the elite wheated bourbon.
See, and because I have the taste, like I'm a rube, guys. I have what they would call trailer park taste. Never mind the champagne tastes and beer money. I have champagne money and not even beer taste. I think I'm drinking moonshine someone made in the backyard. Let me give this a sniff. This one smells a little bit lighter. This one smells a little bit heavier, a little bit, I can smell more of the alcohol in it. It's very smooth, a little sweet on the finish because it's a wheated bourbon. This is the one that was on my left, the one that was facing me to the right.
That one went down hot, the first one I took.
This one was a little hot. This one was very sweet and easy. Chris, which is which?
Which one do you prefer? That's the question.
I like this one. I like the one that's got the sweet finish on it.
Now look raise the glass and look under it, and there's a letter code.
A.
You like A?
Letter A is my favorite.
I knew you were such a plebeian. A, it's this. The Seelbach.
Never mind the impossible to find bourbon. See, guys, this is what I mean.
Hold on.
I am the verse in the song, If I Had $1 Million.
To keep it Bills related, This is Kyer Elam. And this is Christian Benford. Or maybe it's the other way around. This was like a first round pick, or this is pick. This plays like Elam because it's poor and it's readily available. This is the harder to find. Yes,
I will say that I am the human embodiment of that song. If I had $1 million, if we had $1 million, we wouldn't have to eat craft dinner, but we would. We would just eat more with fancy ketchups. That's what I am, and that's why I think I prefer that bourbon. In fact, I'm gonna have to go pick up a bottle of that.
Colonial.
Guys, free agency. Free agency is here. The NFL Combine's over, and I'm glad we got out of it without having to do a single podcast about the Combine itself, because that's
hand size.
It's awful.
Hand size.
But coming out of that, and with all the rumors that you hear coming out, because it is the legal tampering period, I've got to say, as I was doing prep for this show tonight, I realized that the free agency quarterback field might be the most hilarious story told this offseason. Think about it. When you just saw the free agent field a few weeks ago, maybe a month back, Daniel Jones and the Colts looked like they were guaranteed a match made in heaven. Even with that devastating injury, they were going to bring him back. Okay, we were going to get more Daniel Jones and the Colts. And I don't even really know why, because I saw the cracks in that whole thing starting at the beginning. They started 8-2, then went 1-3 leading up to that Achilles tear. So his agent's sitting at home thinking he's got this pretty much in the garage. Once free agency starts, we're going to negotiate a long-term deal. It's going to be great. And all of a sudden, his client is no longer the biggest name on the UFA market, and all it took was 1 week at the Combine. Kyler Murray's name, Tua Tagovailoa, Kirk Cousins, all options that on paper look better than a Daniel Jones coming off an Achilles tear, especially at the kind of money I'm pretty sure Daniel Jones thought he was going to be making. In a weak draft class, there's also 6 different teams who don't have a quarterback. All of a sudden, that free agency market seems way more competitive. But also, if you're Daniel Jones, there's a real risk that if your team in the Indianapolis Colts thinks that it's a quarterback away from competing, your entire value to them just got turned upside down on its head. That's life as an NFL free agent. It comes at you quickly. And this year's draft class and its relative lack of star power is a dynamic we're going to talk about as it impacts what we're going to see over the next week or so. So, post-Combine free agency thoughts. We already know that a lot of the negotiations for these trades and these signings and valuation of unrestricted free agents that goes on here, it's all technically illegal. Not that there's a police force. There's no 911 you can call.
You can't police St. Elmo's.
Yeah, well, exactly. You can't be at the steakhouse and go, hang on a second. I see Chris Ballard talking to so-and-so's a free agent's agent over here at the bar over cocktails. And if you did make a big deal about it, I'm sure someone would drag you out back into the alley. That just strikes me as that kind of an event.
Like Mark Sanchez?
Yes, like Mark Sanchez. So now that all the elbow rubbing and spandex is over, NFL free agency really is already started. The NFL offseason is already underway. And I feel really vindicated by saying that this year the trade market would see a lot more traction than free agency, or at least draw more eyeballs. It's almost like that crappy movie that for some reason I don't hate.
Coneheads?
No, it's called Never Back Down. And there's these 2 main characters who get bounced out of an MMA tournament and decide to fight each other in the parking lot. And then everybody in the venue funnels outside to go watch them fight instead of watching what's supposed to be the championship round. I feel like that's what the trade market, by the time all's said and done, is going to be compared to what free agency is. And it's already getting started. So by the time we get together to do this again, it'll be the second day after. It'll be the day after free agency starts. It'll be that Thursday, because I'm taking a trip to Florida to go visit my old man. And it'll be fun because we can take a look back and see who the early winners and losers are, at least the optical winners and losers, because for all we know, the Miami Dolphins have won a decade's worth of off-season championships and done fuck all with it. But we'll also know whether or not Brandon Beane really stood true to that aggressiveness he kept pounding the podium about. Hey, we got to be aggressive. We're going to be aggressive. Is he? I don't know. All I do know is that he's said a lot of things. He said he's talked about aggressiveness. He's also talked about how much money his quarterback makes. And he's also squandered an awful lot of cap space on some really bad free agency contracts. I almost hesitate to say Chris, do we want him swinging for the fences?
I don't know.
So out of this, some of the biggest rumors that we heard this week that involved the Buffalo Bills, I think the most polarizing one for the fan base, or at least the one that's generating the most conversation, it's what we lead with tonight, is the wide receiver conversation. Everybody who was in Indy this weekend pretty much walked away with a sense that the Bills were eyeing free agents at the wide receiver position. And Romeo Doubs and Rashid Shaheed, those are the rumors, right? Hey, the Bills are focusing on these 2 guys. And I have some really mixed feelings about this. Like, I liked them as trade ideas. At the deadline, I pounded the table for both of them. But that's because they wouldn't have cost us a premium asset. And at the same time, if it didn't work, we weren't stuck with them. Like, we found ourselves stuck with Samuel, or like it appears we may be stuck with Palmer. 2 recent UFA belly flops by this same pro scouting department. If you're talking about spending close to market rate for a guy of that skill set, I don't know. I think it changes the way that I see these 2 guys. Now, I'm looking here in the comments. I don't care if we pull a Ditka and trade everything. Josh and the team deserve it. Mortgage the farm before Josh retires, then rebuild. Fans would take 10 years rebuilding after Josh. You know, and that's a really great point, Mark. It's something that this franchise is going to have to balance, right? Like, at some point, calculated shots are no longer going to get it done. At a certain point, you do have to just say, okay, I'm going to push my chips in the middle. And if I'm wrong, I end up drafting Jamar Chase. If I'm wrong, I get fired. But I have, because I'm hoping that the release of Sean McDermott, after being in so many divisional rounds year after year after year, and after just having been in the championship game 2 years ago, I hope that's a wake-up call for Brandon Beane that you do not have forever. You don't get default seasons just because you found Josh Allen. You have to do something with it. So with that, Chris, there was this tweet by Jeremy White. And this is where, when you're talking about what you pay for that, you know, Mark Sullivan, if it was easy as pulling a Ditka and trading your entire draft class away, that's fine. But you look at this from Jeremy White, where he says only 5 teams pay their second highest paid wide receiver more average annual value than the Bills pay Josh Palmer. It's Philly, it's Cincy, it's Dallas, it's Detroit, it's Jacksonville, by virtue of the fact that they took Travis Hunter with the 2nd overall pick. Chris, you want to throw that tweet up for people? Okay. He says, I only say this as we think about them shelling out 14 plus per for Shaheed or Dobbs. And that is where I start to have a problem with this entire conversation. It makes it feel prohibitive. If only because we've been burned multiple times by this pro scouting department making that exact kind of move. Not a, hey, I'm going to go out and shell out surefire money, Max Crosby money, for a blue chip talent that I know can't fail me. Instead, I'm going to take a quote unquote calculated gamble. Yeah, but those can come up snake eyes. It's Curtis Samuel shows us every single season. When I look at the pros and cons of Rashid Shaheed and Romeo Dobbs, the pros are that they're both wide receivers who are not exactly old, but they're not exactly too young. Like, they're experienced. They're the right amount of seasoning you want in an NFL wide receiver. And they both needed, maybe both need a big change of scenery to make those, big moves in their career. Look at Shaheed when he got to Seattle, making dynamic plays for them in a Super Bowl season. Dobbs got really hot down the stretch statistically for the Packers. I mean, part of that was, I think part of the reason they were gun shy to trade him at the deadline was because Matthew Golden kept getting hurt. They drafted a kid in the first round who kept getting injured and missing playing time. And so because of that, Romeo Dobbs had value to a team like the Packers, who expected, they expected to win their division. Never, and then they trade for Michael Parsons. Now their expectations, we can go win a Super Bowl. So Dobbs played really well for a team with really high expectations. He had at least 60 yards or a touchdown in 4 of his last 5 games. And his last game, no fault of his own, monster performance. 8 catches, 124 and a touchdown. He had double-digit yards per target in each of his final 4 games, Romeo Dobbs did. That all sounds pretty good, doesn't it, Chris?
Yes.
Now, for those of you guys in the chat, that's the type of stuff that you say, if I can get that out of an NFL free agent, then of course he's worth whatever I have to pay. But they're not without downside either, because the Bills already have one of the better kick returners in the entire NFL in Ray Davis. So with that, you've already taken away half of Rashid Shaheed's value. He's like, you at least you've taken away one of the avenues he's supposed to contribute. Also, Shaheed as an outside wide receiver is more of a projection than a proven commodity. He's made splash plays, but in terms of cumulative success percentage, which is a measure of how effective your catches are in getting first down yardage or a touchdown, depending on what your yards from the sticks are, he's averaged 45% per year since his rookie year, when he only saw 30 targets. That's not good. That's actually below average in the NFL. And Shaheed's role would need to be manufactured more than a lot of the other names out there. You know, he's not a guy who wins with route running. He's not a guy who wins because he's not a guy who wins because he's so fast you can't cover him. He's just a guy who is fast, and when you put him in the right situations, he gets separation at the second level and can stress safeties down the field. And that's great because you still need that. It's just, what's the value of it monetarily to a football team? Because I turn around and I look at Romeo Doubs and I say to myself, he's better in terms of success percentage. He's also, he was 58% this past year. Romeo Doubs is probably a more polished all-around receiver than Shaheed. He's just not a great run blocker. He's average, which is fine if that's all you need him to be. Also, Doubs doesn't have the quarterback or offensive coordinator related excuses. When you look at Rashid Shaheed and you go, oh, he doesn't have a 1,000-yard season yet. Well, he played for the Saints. Things haven't exactly been rosy down there. They haven't had a steady quarterback situation. The coaching situation has been in flux, the play calling. So when you look at Doubs, he's actually had a far more stable situation to produce in. And yet his inability to do so is part of the reason that they felt it necessary to go spend a first-round pick on a wide receiver. And then I think they also spent a fourth-round pick on a wide receiver too. Savion Williams. So it's, I don't know. That hot finish to the season is a fantastic tease, but it's hard to say that that small sample size of fantastic play would immediately become a consistent fixture in his game. And you would be really pissed if you paid that kind of money and got Josh Palmer 2.0. And for everybody who says that can't happen, I just want to show you guys this. Greg Thompson DM'd us before tonight's recording, and in his tweet, he had this chart. It's a collection of wide receivers from StatHead. Chris, throw that up there for the people. All right, so this is a comparison in their first 57-ish games between Josh Palmer, Curtis Samuel, Rashid Shaheed, and Romeo Doubs. And there are some eerie similarities that don't sit well with me. They just don't. Doubs beats most of them out statistically, but not by a wide margin. They're all kind of close when you look at their average yardage per game, when you look at their reception totals, when you look at the yards per reception. They're all right there in the same group, which scares me because that makes me think, okay, none of you are anything special. You're supposed to be bit players. You all have some injury history. Like, I don't know. It's crazy watching those two guys that we spend so much time talking about as like great free agent targets kind of align pretty closely with two guys who drive us all fucking crazy every Sunday, especially when you're looking at the inactive report and you see that they're both on it. I don't know. Maybe it's that experience. Like, guys, is that what makes us gun shy? Is that the problem? Is that what makes us gun shy, that we've been burned enough times by this that we automatically start? Like, I get excited, but also I hesitate because I know that there's a downside to it.
I mean, me being a Sabres fan, more so than the Bills, like, it wasn't until Terry, bought the Sabres where we had never been in free agency as big-time players. And then when we did it, it sucked because then we got Ehrhoff and Leno. And we might have Brad Richards.
Hockey heaven, baby.
And then the people that we did sign sucked. And then that completely turned me off as a fan to ever wanting to use big free agency dollars to go after people.
So I will say this. I'm a little surprised that out of all the things that fans have been talking about with wide receiver being such a hot topic, Juwan Jennings hasn't gotten nearly as much run in the mouths of Bills fans over the course of the last month. And I don't know why. I haven't heard any of the mainstream podcasters talking about him. I haven't heard Joe Marino talk about him. They don't bring his name up on WGR. It's always Doubs and Shaheed. And I don't understand why. If there was a guy out here who I would want them to take, Mark Sullivan, I think, said it, why pay for a retread, draft our own? I think you can do that. And at the same time, if I was going to throw a dart, And I thought it could be a cost-controlled one. One of the ones I'm starting to come around on is the idea of Juwan Jennings. And it's not hard to see why. Brandon Ayuk not being available for the 49ers for the last 2 seasons, Jennings was getting every opponent's best coverage men, and he still managed to be productive. He's also the anti-Josh Palmer. Jennings did absorb an atrocious number of injuries last season. Look at this, Chris. So he borderline dislocates his shoulder in week 1. Injures his other shoulder in week 2, along with his ankle. Then they're playing Jacksonville. He absorbs a hit that they called a rib injury that he played through. And then one day after the game, they're talking about it and they go, oh yeah, they said, hey, so your ribs, how are they doing? He's like, oh, 5 of them are broken. I've got 5 broken ribs and I'm still out here playing. And oh, by the way, I'm a really good run blocker. And even with all those injuries, he still managed to play in 15 of those 17 games. Meanwhile, Josh Palmer, where was he for most of this season?
That Atlanta game.
So he still, and with all those injuries, and the reason why I think it's important to underscore how banged up he was last year, he still finished top 4 in the NFL in contested catches with 18 of them. I mean, he sounds like the Jordan Poyer version of a wide receiver. Just, hey, I'm jacked up out here, but I'm a football player. I think you as a football team, especially a Buffalo team built the way we are, would want a guy like that over a finesse player like a Shaheed, over a guy like Romeo Doubs, who has a decent skill set, but I don't know what's the level of dog that guy has in him, because Juwan Jennings seems to have it. And he could come at a reduced price because of those durability concerns. And just as quickly as I say all these nice things, Chris, I can sit here and go, if he turned into Curtis Samuel 2.0, where he was inactive and he only ended up playing 10 games as a Buffalo Bill, it wouldn't matter if we gave him 15, 50, or 5 million. I would lose my mind about the fact that we inked that contract. So it's hard to look at any of these guys as an answer, but there's also history behind that. There's this tweet from Carl Jones from WIVB Sports. Since 2016, only 7 free agent wide receivers have recorded a 1,000-yard season in the year that they were signed. That doesn't bode well for this. At least not if you're trying to find the answer to your problems. Sure, these guys can be pieces. You just need to also make sure you're paying them like pieces in order to get the adequate value from their presence on your team. And that's where I think the value of what the Bills do to reshape the wide receiver room this year can't be defined by free agency. It can't be. It's going to be defined by what they do in the combination of free agency and the draft. And because you think about Mike Evans is a name that started creeping up in here. After Indy, the Bills signing Mike Evans started to gain steam, and it had all the feelings of a T.O. signing to me.
I think somebody brought that up in the chat a little bit earlier. I can't remember who it was, but somebody brought up the idea of Mike Evans, and he would have to be on you'd have to get him at vet minimum to where you can convince him, hey, come here, we'll get you a championship and focus on that.
And that's the problem. You're never good because in free agency, you're never paying somebody for what they are right now. You're always paying for what they've already done. And that's why you get yourself in trouble. And I don't want to be mean to Mike Evans. I guarantee you his season, if he signed a 1-year deal here, it wouldn't go as poorly as the T.O. signing did. Mostly because of Josh Allen, because he's any better than T.O. was. It's just that the projected price tag that he would draw just because of who he is as a future Hall of Famer, you're always going to overpay.
You know what you could have done is just drafted him instead of Sammy Watkins. Then it would have been cool.
If someone could go back in a time machine, it's funny because I feel like when, if I were to go ask my wife, honey, if I give you a time machine, what would you do with it? And she would go, oh, I'd like to go back in time and see what it was like when my grandparents were living in Poland and growing up like pre-World War II era and all this stuff. And that's nowhere near where my mind is. My mind is, can I go back to the night of the draft when we took Sammy Watkins over Micah? And can I just tackle Doug Whaley before he gets to pick up that phone? Just run the clock. If somebody else leapfrogs us in the draft order, takes Sammy Watkins, who knows? Our entire franchise trajectory might be different. The only way I would be okay, and I guess we'll have to wait months to figure, to find out whether or not this lands, but the only way I'm going to feel good about addressing wide receiver at this point is going to be based on the whether or not they do the old George Costanza, the double dip at wide receiver. And you take a look at it, whatever style of wide receiver that they're going to pull in free agency, I think almost dictates who they have to target in the draft or the style of wide receiver that they have to pursue. Because if you go out there and spend the cap space necessary to get Mike Evans for one season, you probably still need to go out and invest a first round or a second round pick in a boundary wide receiver because you still need a future at the position. You don't want to go into 2027 or 2028 wading back into the free agency pool looking for the same answers to the same problems you have right now. So now you're out there looking for, I know people are split on Denzel Boston. So if you don't like a big, slow, maybe Keon Coleman 2.0, I could give you a J. Michael Sturdivant out of Florida. I could offer you a Chris Brazzell out of Tennessee. Deshaun Stribling out of Ole Miss, guys who are big, who play with speed on the outside and win both inside and outside leverage on a regular basis. Just good body control, good hands, guys who can develop into boundary receivers. If Shaheed is the target, and they're hoping that just pure downfield speed and maybe working some gimmick plays into the offense to get him the ball in the open field, doesn't that almost feel like hat on a hat for what they already have to try to do for Khalil Shakir?
Yeah.
So I've been, as a trade target, fine, Shaheed made sense. As a free agent signing, I would rather see them lean towards Dobbs. But at the same time, it doesn't matter because you're going to have to be faced with the same problem. You're then now targeting a route technician because Shaheed's not that. And Dobbs is milquetoast in that regard. You now need a route technician with route running and release techniques who have a more developed route tree, since you're not getting that from whoever you're paying $14 to $15 million a year. So now you're looking at a Casey Concepcion. Maybe he's your first round draft pick. Or you got to go with a guy like Jeremy Bernard, maybe on day 2. Now, that's not just my Alabama bias. This is a guy who doesn't have top end speed. So he's automatically off the board in the top 20 of the draft because he didn't run a strong 40. And when you watch his tape, he just doesn't have that. He doesn't have that element to his game, but that's not where he succeeds. The thing I always said, and it's funny because Bruce Nolan literally just tweeted about Jeremy Bernard and all the things that he loves about him. In fact, let me see if I can pull that up here with my handy dandy little clicker. Bruce Nolan 1 hour ago. I'm a Jeremy Bernard fan. High floor route tree, inside and outside work, backside inbreaker, tough run after the catch. He's like when he gets the ball in his hands, he's like a running back who can run at a wide receiver's pace. 6'1", 205. He's a day 2 guy who, if you went out and signed a Rashid or a Dobbs, you could pair them up with the Jeremy Bernard. Now you have a really strong route runner, a seasoned vet who doesn't have to be a really strong route runner because they can play the deep portion of the field as your other boundary receiver at the X position. And you can rotate everybody else through the slot and try to manufacture your offense that way, especially when you get Kincaid on the field. And Jeremy Bernard is a plus run blocker. So to me, that makes a ton of sense. I love the idea, but again, it's all influenced by who you signed. Whatever they do, they're going to have to do it in sets of 2. Here at the wide receiver position, whatever their philosophy becomes. And so, Chris, I'm fascinated by the fact that they've zeroed in on these guys. Out of the names available, Juwan Jennings, Romeo Dobbs, Rashid Shaheed, Mike Evans, who of that foursome would you take? If the ask was 15 to 17 million a year.
It'd probably be Dobbs. I'd like Evans, but he would have to take probably way less than he wants. It's Mike Evans. How much money have you made? Can't you live off of that for the rest of your life? Do you want a chance at a Super Bowl? Sign here for pennies. Yeah,
but also, what if he could just go to the Patriots, who were just in the Super Bowl, sign there for $25 million for a 2-year deal per, and he gets both?
See, that's what we don't have going for us is the quarterback rookie contract. That's how the Patriots are able to attract people like a Mike Evans or who else was? I think it was Mac. Didn't Max Crosby say he wanted to go there
to the Patriots
and play for Vrabel?
I'm sure. Who would? What defensive guy wouldn't want to play for Vrabel? In fact, let's talk about that dynamic because that's another one of the things to come out of Indy this weekend. And I hate that we do this, right? Like I hate that as a society, every time someone says anything sort of interesting, we drop this thing of like, oh, it's a bombshell. No, it's not. It's like when people tell me that, oh my God, it's shocking that a woman got attacked by a great white shark off the coast of Australia. And I go, well, what was she doing? They're like, well, she was swimming in the ocean. Oh no, there's nothing shocking about that. That's where they live. You went to where the great white sharks live and you got attacked. I would be shocked if I was sitting at the bar and like, Chris, if someone called you and said, hey, Drew got attacked by a great white shark. Did you hear? And you'd be like, no, where was he? He was sitting at Good Times. He was sitting at Good Times having a beer and it just came in and bit him. That would be shocking. When I hear that Max Crosby is getting traded after we already heard the Jay Glazer report back at the Super Bowl, and we already know he just spent a really frustrating season where the team shut him down against his will just to, like what, Chris, what was it, like to cement their draft position?
Yes.
Yeah, I wouldn't want anything to do with that franchise either. So I don't know why it's called a bombshell report that he's going to get traded. But it is interesting that they're talking about it happening this week. And so with that, all these Bills fans are now jumping up and down and saying, oh my God, it's going to happen. It could happen. Chris, say it with me. Goose fraba. You all need to take a deep breath and calm down. Do you understand how significant the compensation would have to be for a trade like this? I'm all for fun things and nice things for my Buffalo Bills. Trust me, when Mario Williams got signed, like I think I've told the story, but in a truncated version, I got kicked out of my ex-girlfriend's apartment. She woke me up in the middle of the night, screaming at me, putting a bunch of, she went through my phone. She went through my phone and looked at a period of back through my texts to a period of time when she had broken up with me and we were on a break, and then got mad that I took a run at one of her friends and kicked me out of her apartment. And when I couldn't find my cell phone in the fracas, she threw hers at me, told me she would see me in hell, and slammed the door in my face. And do you know what I did? I drove home to my apartment. I laid on my couch and I used her phone to scroll Twitter to see, like, is Mario Williams still in town? Did we sign him yet?
Dude, I just remember it being oddly warm, his week heater. And I was working in Albany. I was driving back and forth on the weekends and working in Albany. And I had just moved back, so I had T-Mobile, but T-Mobile is dog shit in New York State. Yeah, so I couldn't get it. I couldn't get service to listen to GR on my phone in between Syracuse and Albany and Syracuse and Rochester. I just had to like give up and listen to whatever radio I could in my rental car.
So Roy Collins, I didn't realize teams can trade players before the official start of the season. They can't officially, right? Like, Roy, you'll probably remember the Buffalo Bills had a deal in place to sign J.D. McKissick. And then...
Oh, yeah, and then he bounced. He went back to Washington.
So you can make the trade in... what do they call it, Chris? What's that term? They're like in principle. Yeah. You can make the agreement or the trade in principle, but it doesn't mean anything until everybody's signatures hit the ink. And that's why this is important. So I look at this. You want to talk about the type of compensation we're talking about for a Max Crosby trade. I just want to walk you through the Parsons trade as a comparison. In trading for Micah Parsons, Green Bay gave up a 2026 first-round pick, a 2027 first-round pick, and starting defensive tackle Kenny Clark. And one of the advantageous things was that Green Bay got to negotiate the size and structure of the contract that Micah Parsons was going to receive, so they could make it as advantageous as possible to their 2025 and 2026 salary caps. Meanwhile, if you're talking about a Max Crosby trade, this is a player who is going to be receiving cap hits of what I got it here, $35.7 million in 2026, $29.7 in 2027. you're going to need the Raiders to eat some of that if the Buffalo Bills are truly going to be into this. Like Albert Breer kind of alludes to the fact that they're at least having the conversation. Okay. And so with that, the Bills would be giving up their 2026 first, 2027 first, maybe a roster player, but probably not. Because if you look at it, none of our trade-linked players are guys that we could live without. Ed Oliver, maybe Teron Johnson could go. I've heard he's either going to be moved to a different position. He could be a post-June 1 cut. There's some things they can do with him, but nobody's trading for that salary. And if they do trade pre-June 1, it doesn't give us any cap relief. So it doesn't solve the problem. So, I mean, a player like Knox, when you say, oh, you could cut Knox and save almost $10 million in cap space. Okay, teams are banking on that because there's no team who's going to trade for Dawson Knox's $17 million cap hit, right?
Correct.
That's not a thing that's happening. So teams are waiting for you to release those players. They're not accepting them as part of a giant trade like this. And if you wanted to get them to retain salary at the level we would need it, you're talking about maybe throwing in another day 2 pick. So for all the wide receiver talk we just had, and all the talk about how, the double dip would be necessary no matter who they sign as a free agent to fix your wide receiver problem. And then, by the way, you've got a million holes on defense that this one signing wouldn't really address. If the Bills, I have a scenario laid out here for you, and I want your opinion, Bills fans. If the Bills were to sign, okay, let's say we trade. Let's say we trade for Max Crosby. And then turn around and Brandon Beane said, hey, guys, the best I can give you on offense is a used Noah Brown, a redo on the Marvez Valdez-Scantling thing, a flyer on Lil Jordan Humphrey in free agency, and a Brandon Cooks signing for a combined $7.5 million. And then I can maybe afford to take a day 3 pick like Skylar Bell from Nevada or maybe Deion Burks from Oklahoma. I want to know where you would all fall on the emotional scale of the Bills just broke the drought to Leotis McKelvin not kneeling the ball down in the end zone against New England on Monday Night Football. How upset would you be if he put all of his eggs in the Max Crosby basket when we have so many other problems besides having a premier pass rusher?
I mean, I wouldn't mind Max Crosby, but I don't want to pay the cost for it. I would rather have a top tier offense and a middle of the pack defense for Josh Allen. Just give me like a bend but don't break type of defense. Like 10 to 15 in total defense over the course of the year. I don't need a top 5 defense. Just give me something that Josh Allen can work with.
And then what I love is when it doesn't happen, Bills fans will be pissed. They'll go, oh my God, I can't believe Brandon Beane didn't get this done. He stinks. He didn't try hard enough. I want you to hear a quote from Stephen Jones. Okay? Stephen Jones, GM and the owner of the Cowboys' son, the famous Jerry Jones. Even if Beane wanted to try to just go for a home run swing at pass rusher, he's like the guy. It's like me walking into a casino. I gamble once in a while. I'll walk into but it's like me going into the high stakes hold'em room. Okay. There's whales out there who have capital to burn and they don't give a shit. And their seats aren't nearly as hot as what Brandon Beane is looking at right now. That's your competition. Listen to this. This is from Stephen Jones in his bus at the Combine. I would bet that we'll spend more money in free agency than we have in the past, Jones said in a session with his bus beat writers. What is this? All City DLLS. I want you to know that the only way to push forward is for me to go borrow some from my future. Expect me to go borrow some of my future, okay? I want to do everything we possibly can to stop somebody and to basically win some third downs more than we did last year. So I think that would be the area you would see me bust the budget. Do you know that the Dallas Cowboys between now and next week can generate almost $80 million in cap space? Restructuring, releasing, doing a lot of things. And he's going to have a lot of money to borrow from his future. And if he's telling you that he's going to do it, that's just one of the people. I mean, he can't get fired. If he swings for the fences on a Max Crosby trade a year after they let Micah Parsons walk, there's no consequence. If it blows up in their face, No one's getting fired because they own the team. Similarly, the Patriots have a ton of cap space to burn. And at the same time, they just made the Super Bowl. So even if it didn't go well, or let's say they took a step back next year as a team, they still have Max Crosby. It would still be exciting. It would put asses in seats, and Elliott Wolf can afford a Hail Mary at this point. You made the Super Bowl. Stephen Jones can't get fired. Duke Tobin from Cincy. Do you know Cincinnati's been rumored being, hey, we might be able to get rid of an older pass rusher and go trade for Max Crosby because we have the money to pay him. Might as well do it now while our quarterback's in his prime. Duke Tobin from Cincinnati could literally go up into the 300 section in the first quarter of a game, light an entire section on fire with everyone still sitting in it, and keep his job. There's no chance that guy gets fired. So it's just the idea that the Bills may want to do things. It's just impossible to do them when you're going up against guys with gobs of cash and not much else going for them. And some of these guys who know they can't get fired regardless of how well it goes. Meanwhile, Brandon Beane, for as hot as he feels his seat might be, I think at his core, even when he's being the most aggressive version of himself, this is a bridge too far. The most aggressive thing he's ever done was trade a single first-round draft pick for a player, and also ancillary considerations on down. I can't see him giving up that type of a haul when this team has this many holes during a transition like this. You know, you hear him on the dais there at the combine talking to people about how there's multiple players here who don't fit the scheme and that he's had to have some hard conversations with some of our current rostered players. I'm picturing Landon Jackson being one of them, a guy they literally just drafted last year.
Didn't you tweet at Ant about that?
Yeah. I was like, Landon Jackson, he's one of these guys who I don't see a home for. You're not big enough to ever become a 3-4 inside a 5 technique D end. You're too stiff to ever play outside linebacker. You weren't good as a 3-4 D end or 4-3 D end because you couldn't get on the field all season long. And then when you did, you immediately tore your ACL. I just don't see a home for guys like that. I just think there's too much else that's unsettled. And also, I think some of this is a byproduct and some of this push and some of the heat where there's going to be fans who look at things and go, well, why couldn't the Bills make that trade? A lot of it's a dynamic that, like, look at today's trade of running back David Montgomery, right? That trade is wild to me because the running back tandem was the thing that powered the offense of the Lions for the last handful of years. And now, you know, it didn't make sense until I saw this tweet from Brett Coleman, where he basically pointed out, Chris, if you want to read it for the people.
I think it also does say a lot about this running back class that you have some teams holding on to their starters for dear life, while others are trading fourth rounders for a 29-year-old with 2 years left on his deal just to make sure they have someone who can reliably get 4.5 yards.
And that's a problem. And then you start thinking about where else this might impact. Wide receiver probably won't be one of these. This wide receiver class is going to be pretty well-rounded. The offensive line class in the draft this year is supposed to be top flight along with the linebackers. But what about some of these other spots? You know, like if anything, like you saw today, Houston trading away offensive linemen. I made the joke that that's actually them trying to punish CJ Stroud. I was like, he threw away their best shot at a Super Bowl because there was no Patrick Mahomes. There was no Patrick Mahomes. There was no, what's his name? Lamar Jackson. There was none of those guys standing in their way. And CJ Stroud went out there and did CJ Stroud things. And so their punishment for him is screw it. We're going to trade away all your offensive linemen. But the reality is they probably believe this draft class is where they can fix this. I wouldn't be shocked if after seeing the trades that Houston made today, sending Titus Howard to the Browns and sending Juice Scruggs, their developmental interior lineman, off to, I believe it was the Lions as part of the Montgomery trade. I'm telling you that that's going to be a strong point of the draft, and they're guessing they can double dip there. Because that's where they're like, oh, well, why take one? We can take two. We don't need these high-priced veterans. We don't need to pay Juice Scruggs a contract extension, so we might as well get him out of here if they want him. It is interesting to see how the draft is going to influence a lot of the decisions you see made over the next week. The trades are going to continue to pour in. Decisions like this are going to continue to be made. And like, look at this. Ryan Tongan, Rashid Shaheed, and Jordan Tyson, please. Jordan Tyson is working his way after these workouts. It's reshuffled the wide receiver big boards, which is why I hate all this pre-draft nonsense. Everyone's like, oh, well, he's wide receiver 8 on my big board. The fuck cares about your big board? That's why we literally every year do a mocking the mocks exercise where we score who does where in their quote unquote final mock. We score it like golf, and then we bring it to the podcast and we make fun of them all. Because first of all, mocks are embarrassing. You shouldn't be doing that. It's like
people love watching them.
It's like a lot of things like me. Something I like doing, Chris, Pokemon. An emulator on my computer and I could play the old school Pokemon game. Oh, dude, if I wasn't falling asleep at 9:30 every night on my couch, I would be playing that ad nauseum. Now that's probably embarrassing, right? But I'm not, right? I do it quietly in my own home. I don't tweet about it. I don't put it out there for public consumption. See, these people are talking about mock drafts. See, look, Roy Collins, Casey Concepcion is probably a more realistic draft pick at wide receiver. Sure.
Do you know who likes him?
Who?
Steve Mathis.
You know who doesn't like his hair? Drew Gear. What I love about this, though, is that if you were to go do nothing, what if the Bills do nothing at wide receiver? Are we really going to riot? Or do we kind of or would we take this nuanced approach and say, okay, maybe they saw all the things Drew Gear with a head full of whiskey saw, and they decided that they were going to go be aggressive in the draft. And instead, they decided to go try to find value guys out there in the market. Last week we had Anthony Prohaska on the show, and we talked through a lot of different philosophies about offensive and defensive free agency this year and what the Bills' needs were. And one of the things he said flat out is, you have to come out of this with either Leo Chenal or what is the guy's name?
Caden Ellis.
Caden Ellis. He was like, if you don't come out of this with one of those two, everything else you do will be kind of a half measure because you'll never be able to run the Jim Leonard defense without them. And it's funny that we haven't heard any rumors about that. But also you haven't heard any rumors about linebackers, period. And this is where I think this draft dynamic that I just hit on, you've got teams that are desperately hanging on to guys, and you've got guys saying, okay, screw it. We'll fix our problems here in the draft when the class is deep, but at running back, they couldn't do it. This is talked about as being maybe an exceptional linebacker class. So in that way, maybe these, maybe Ellis, maybe Chenal, guys like that, maybe they don't draw as much free agency attention because the teams that are losing them say, listen, I'm going to pay a premium to other positions. I'll go solve those things in the draft. And the Bills are saying, hey, I need to jumpstart my defense tomorrow because I'm already in a Super Bowl window. So you're the one talking to his agent, Ellis's agent, to Chenal's agent, and you end up signing those guys for cheaper than I think people think they'll come in at. That's my prognostication. I think that the linebacker additions that this team is going to make, I have to think they make one in free agency. And then maybe they turn to the draft and they double dip there too, because this is supposed to be such a good class. And we have a lot of work to do to really flesh the room out. But I think that will come at a much lower expense than people expect. Chris, you said something pre-show. I was going to get this in, and then I got distracted by the comments. Over under for wide receivers in the draft. 1.5. What do you think?
I did put that in the comments. Roy Collins said under. He said we'll get one in free agency, probably draft one, and then I think he said we'll have some UDFAs. But again, I mean, Samuel could get, he's a possible cut.
We have 3.
And
for
then
all intents and purposes, ACL.
Shavers is out for the year.
So you have 3 viable wide receivers right now on your roster. You need to go into camp with 10.
9 to 10.
9 to 10. So you've got work to do whether you like it or not. The question is, where do you want to do it? Could you see them sign a free agent or 2 or 3 and still double dip in the draft? Probably. I think that would be fair.
Yeah, I would just say go back to the tweets that we showed from Carl Jones from WIVB. He was like, what is it, only 2 wide receivers that have signed in free agency? Hopkins and Diggs were the only ones that got a 1,000-yard season.
Yeah.
So it's like, don't expect much from a free agent receiver. If you want a quality receiver, draft him. Do I trust Bean to do that? No, I don't. I don't.
That's a whole other conversation.
I don't, based on, I remember that, who was the guy? Was it Big Rick in the mailroom that Josh shouted out at his MVP speech? And then who's the big dealership in town? What's the dealership in Orchard Park?
I don't know.
The big name.
West Her?
Yeah, West Her. Didn't West Her jump in and give that guy a car because he didn't have one? If I'm Bean, I go to Big Rick in the mailroom and go, who do we draft? I can't do it. I don't know. I don't know who's good, who's not. Who would you take, Big Rick in the mailroom? I'll draft who you suggest because I can't do it.
So I will say there's also the dynamic of veteran cuts. So what I just did was I went and I opened up Pro Football. I just went and opened up Pro Football Talk. And the headline right now is the Texans are releasing veteran safety Jimmy Ward. Okay. Jimmy Ward's probably not our cup of tea. At the same time, the Lions just released guard Graham Glasgow. He's a veteran who's been part of one of the most successful offensive lines in the NFL over the last few years. This is going to continue over the next 5, 6, 7 days because, again, now agents have had time to have conversations and back channeling with GMs. They're all getting together and saying, hey, what can I get? What's my client worth? Are you releasing? Are you going to extend my client? Because if not, then just release him so that he can get a head start. Yeah, especially if they're the type of player who's a veteran who knows that there may be a market before camp if they can get out there. That's going to reshape some of these markets. And that brings some really interesting things like I don't know. I look at some of the positions like the Roy Lopez conversation I had with Anthony last week, where he talked about how he's like, I don't understand why this guy's undervalued other than he doesn't bring pass rush, but it doesn't matter when you don't need that right now. If you're the Buffalo Bills, you need a nose tackle. And then Chris Brown said something the other day where he was talking about the Bills were strapped for cash a couple of years ago and made with the year they signed Leonard Floyd. It was Leonard Floyd.
So 2020.
Von Miller was injured, and Leonard Floyd still had 10 sacks. They signed 10 UFAs, even though they were quote unquote cash strapped. They signed 10 free agents to 1 or 2 year deals out of the gate to remake that team. So it can be done. And it's the guys like this where you say, okay, maybe I do need to go into this draft that is going to have a number of pluggers available. There's going to be a number of defensive linemen who are your true nose tackles available. But what if I decide I'd also like to hedge my bets because I know I need one for this scheme and say, what's a Roy Lopez worth? $3 million? I can find that. I can go find $3 million for a Roy Lopez. Also, there's one that I think is under the radar because the Bills know they need pass rush help. And getting an Ellis at linebacker would help them do some things, like a Sam linebacker who's a pass rusher who does some things. Also, there could be a possibility that there's a player out there like Caleb Von Chasen. Because I saw the other day, they were like, oh, no, he could get as much as $15 million a year. Well, I just had 10 sacks for a season, 7.5 in the regular season. And not for nothing, he outperformed in terms of pass rushing a guy, Joey Bosa, who we just paid $12 million. What's another 3 at that point? for a younger, more athletic player without the injury history. I don't know.
What if he becomes Mark Anderson?
Dude, that was one. Mark Anderson. And I think that's the thing that scares me is not in terms of the free agent market this year. It's actually the draft. And I think that's why one of my hot takes for this cycle, and we're going to see if it comes true by the time we get together to do another podcast. I think the position that's going to be most overpaid out of this entire cycle is going to be the edge players in this free agency class. I think it's highly mediocre. I think beyond Trey Hendrickson, Chris, you want to go ahead and pull it up over here for me, the not Spotrac, or maybe it is 2026 free agency tracker. Outside of Trey Hendrickson, there is no blue chip prospect. And when you're talking about a guy like Odafe getting upwards of 16, 17, maybe touching $20 million a year. And
do you want a specific group?
Yeah, edge. Go down there, edge defender. So when you're talking about the potential for a guy like a, so here, sort it by market value. I don't like Spotrac's numbers for gospel, but I do like seeing how this stacks up. Imagine Odafe being worth $17 million, we'll call it. $17 million a year. And the Ravens said, nah, we don't want to pay him that. Do you want to be the team that's signing that contract? I don't want any part of this. I think that the edge market, being as incredibly limited as it is going to see a lot of gross overpays. I'd like to avoid that if possible, but I also think that it's a byproduct of what the draft class is this year. Like, when you think about it, look at the draft class, Chris. There's no... Look, you know who Ruben Bain is.
Heard of him.
You know who Mesidor is?
Don't know that name.
Exactly, and that's my point. The class this year is so unregarded, right? 4 of the guys that we could talk about will fit into the top 30, the edge class. It's just bad. You might find a scheme fit contributor here or there, but there's not a ton of star power, and there's just a lot of guys who are pure projection. And a lot of that's a byproduct of the Brent Venables of the world. The guys who have created these hybrid monstrosities of defenses out there in the NCAA landscape, where you don't know how these guys, how they contribute at the NFL level. You see sacks, you see pass rushes, you see pressures, and you go, oh, he has this move and he has that move, and sometimes he does this really well. Other times he's getting washed out of plays completely. And it's because everybody's some kind of specialist now in college. And that gives a lot of NFL teams pause when they're trying to invest high draft picks into players who at that cost have to be stars. Not just monetary cost, but opportunity cost. When you think about this, it's going to pump up the UFA market. And I think some of the most aggressive overpays are coming here because Odafe and Boy Mafia, we talked about him. I think he would be great here in Buffalo. I just don't know that we could ever figure out how to get the money together for him. Trey Hendrickson, another one where the Bills fans are going to pine for a great pass rusher, and they see the money they get and then laugh and go, wow, all right, good luck to you guys. If he ends up a Patriot, I'll be sick about it. Could you imagine if they traded for Max Crosby and got Trey Hendrickson?
That would bother me. That team would be so awesome in 2019.
I don't know. I feel like between all of these desperate football teams, between the teams that know they have nothing to lose, there's going to be a lot of overpays in the next week that we can get together and laugh about. AJ Epinesa is going to get a contract. What do you think about AJ Epinesa? I feel like some team is going to give him $8-9 million on like a 2-year deal. Just because when you watch him play, I never really thought he fit as a 4-3 defensive end. We had to make him reshape his entire body to fit what we wanted him to be, which I don't understand why we drafted him if that was the case. So,
I mean, my brain is clouded on Epinesa based on your taking down of the hashtag sports draft stream.
For those of you who are new to the program,
just Mark Sullivan.
for those of you who are new to the program, one year I saw that we took AJ Epinesa, the pick before J.K. Dobbins, and that was the first pick of the night. And we were on somebody else's stream. It was the #sports live day 2 draft night stream. And my overwhelming negativity about that selection derailed the entire broadcast. Nothing, never recovered. And also their whole fan base hates my guts to this day. And the feeling's mutual. In fact, I don't even hate them. I'm happy that I bother them so much. Because that's what being petty is about.
There's some crossover people that like hashtag that are here.
If so, someone needs to go tell Mario during his next live stream that he needs to hurry up and close the front door to the house from Scary Movie. Isn't that his job?
Yeah.
Guys, it's, I don't know. Chris, do you want to shoot your shot and try to guess at least one UFA the Bills will sign? Because you used to hate it when I'd get them right. Ty and Secchi. I'll never forget how much that bothered you.
Yeah. Well, it bothered me because it was such a low-level signing. That was like a depth signing, which those are even, I think, harder to nail than like the obvious, like a Mario Williams. He's coming here. We have nice weather. He's going to go hunting with Jim Kelly in East Aurora. You got to sign a wide receiver. I mean, I think you would want to go Dobbs over as Shaheed, because if you bring in Shaheed, then what are you doing at returner with Ray Davis? Ray Davis was tops in the league for a kick returner, so you're going to pull him. But we don't have Ty Johnson either, right? Ty Johnson's gone.
I believe
he has one more year.
Well, why don't you give it a goog?
I'll look that because
it bothers everyone when I say it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because that also plays into it. So if you went with Shaheed, are you pulling Ray Davis off kick return duty? And if you don't have Ty Johnson anymore, is Ray Davis taking that role? And is he ready for that? And let me just gauge the chat now that I've got all your attention. I haven't bored you all to death yet. What if the Buffalo Bills, I want your honest reactions in the chat. What if the Buffalo Bills decided it's not worth fighting with these other teams? Because you think that Dobbs might get 16 or 17, but what if there's another team, or 14 or 15? What if there's another team out there that wants him too, and now it gets up to 16? Ty Johnson's here next year.
Now it's 18. Now it's 20. Well, his cap hits 3.2 million. You could move on from him if there's an alternative. If you're talking about paying either of Shaheed or Dobbs north of 14 or 15 million a year, now you have a problem on your hands. What if the Bills said, fine, fuck it, we zag when you guys are clearly zigging. We're not going to argue or fight with you guys over these mid-level talent wide receivers. Instead, we will just go be very aggressive in the draft. And we're going to go try to bring in a Carnell Tate. We're going to go try to bring in what is his name? Yost or Toast the most.
Raheem Mostert?
Raheem Mostert. No. So we're going to double dip in day 1 and day 2, and we're going to make splashes to do so. We're going to go get upper echelon wide receiver talent. The thing that I think about when I think about that is how Houston drafted a wide receiver at the top of round 2 last year and then caused a fracas by fully guaranteeing his contract. Where did that get him? Where did that get them last year when they desperately needed wide receiver help when Nico Collins went out with his concussion? Where did that second round pick and then the double dip that they had later in the draft at wide receiver in Noel, where did that get them?
Well, it set you off on a tangent to do a ton of research because that had never been done before, where a second round pick got a guaranteed contract and then we had to do a whole show about it.
This is why during our show with Anthony Prohaska last week, I said, and it aired last night, for those of you who haven't seen it, go check it out. I said, guys, all of this talk about the draft and free agency, the sexiest things you could do with this wide receiver position are a trade. And I stand by that. I look at Brian Thomas Jr. and maybe they won't let him go. Okay, go talk to the Browns about a Jerry Jeudy. Say, look, what is it going to cost? He's got a $6 million cap hit. You mean to tell me I'm going to pay how much for a Romeo Doubs when I can get a Jerry Jeudy who I at least know has done, he's had a 1,200-yard season in the last 2 years? Okay, I will take that. But everyone keeps trying to sell me Romeo Doubs and telling me why I should pay him $14 million. What if I could just go get a guy who already did it? He did the thing that you all think Romeo Doubs could be. What's it going to cost me? A second-round pick? Fine. And then I get to negotiate what his deal is from here on out. Why is that not a thing that we're talking about? I'm fascinated with the lack of flexibility that some people have, or the inventiveness that some of our fan base has. I think that, as I've been saying all offseason long, trades and the value of trades will outweigh anything you get out of free agency this year. If the Bills choose to do this, I will be embarrassed, or at least I'll be highly disappointed. I will, if Brandon Beane truly is the big baller Beane, you know, Beane after dark, all this nonsense, all these things that we ascribe to him as this negotiator, as this, you know, master of contracts and whatnot, I would have a hard time believing he couldn't go to the Browns, who are a team that are a perennial shit show, and go leverage a Jerry Jeudy for $6 million this year out of them, and then say, look, Jeudy, what do you want? If it goes well, I'll write you can write your next contract. You can come to my office and write it yourself, but you got to do the work. I just think that there's so much more value in what's out there in that regard. And I think if the Bills were smart, that's where their eyes would be. You could tell me, hey, good, because guys, you literally love the idea. Our 6th pick this year turned into a 7th because of Codrington. Damn it, Codrington. Chris, am I wrong? Guys in the chat, am I wrong? Am I wrong here? Someone talk to me. Talk to me, Goose. Tell me if I'm not seeing this correctly. I believe that the best values you can find out there in terms of the future and the present exist in trading draft capital for these players that are already out there and have proven that they have a higher ceiling. And the fact that we're here talking about Romeo Doubs and Rashid Shaheed is a terrible half measure. I don't want to live in that world. I'm sick and tired of living in a world of half measures. I don't believe in them in life. I don't believe in them in business, and I don't believe in them in football. If you want to fix a problem, go fix it by finding a guy who you know can do the job. Otherwise, all you're doing is bringing in Juwan Jennings, the next Curtis Samuel, or Rashid Shaheed, Percy Harvin 2.0. Or you're going to go out there and get Romeo Doubs, who he'll be fine, but he won't be special. And maybe you don't need special to win a Super Bowl with the Buffalo Bills. And I guess maybe that's the rub here. Maybe you don't need special to win with the Bills in 2026. Like, I don't know.
Didn't Anthony say when he was here it was Romeo Doubs and no one else? I think that was his exact quote.
Yeah, it was literally, he's like, I'm not interested in talking about any of these other idiots. So it's like, look, maybe it's Romeo Doubs, and then I know I still have a ton of work to do in the draft.
Curtis wants to know in the chat how much you would trade for Jefferson. Is that even feasible?
I would send them one of Chris's fingers, my producer Chris, every single day that they didn't trade him to me. I'd be like, I want to show you how serious I am. Every day a finger would arrive in a box. Chris's face right now is hilarious. This year's first and a first in 2028 for Jefferson. I don't think you guys understand how much money that guy makes. It'd be the Max Crosby conversation all over again. But that's okay. It's not bad. It's just the reality of things. Why not go get your own? Why not? But with those costs, why not go get a boatload of wide receivers and maybe one of them is a Justin Jefferson? Or maybe you don't need Justin Jefferson, who has been making mediocre quarterbacks look amazing. You have an amazing quarterback. You just need guys he can work with situationally. There's a difference. That's why I wouldn't go get Justin Jefferson. That's why.
Yeah, I would Just wait till the draft. That's where you're going to do your best to take a Justin Shorter instead of a Puka Nakua. That's where you're going to who are the other was it Gabe Davis was a 5th and Isaiah Hodgins was a 3rd, or was it vice versa?
Vice versa.
And
no, Isaiah Hodgins was like a 7th round pick.
Yeah. But Nate Geary was like Hodgins over Gabe Davis.
Yeah.
Or somebody commented on a video, I think the one that came out yesterday with Anthony. Why don't we go just in the draft and get Sadiq from Oregon? I was like, didn't we just try that with Kincaid? And the guy was like, exactly my point. Because we have that, there's that clip from when Nate was here years ago when we took Kincaid, which we're going to have to dig up for a future show. We're, looking at Kincaid as a wide receiver because that was supposed to be his skill set. Was we're going to have Kincaid and he's a wide receiver and he just can't stay in the goddamn field.
I watch all this unfold and I say to myself, if you were really trying to be a savvy GM, for everything we like to laud Brandon Beane for, if I was really savvy, what I would try to do is find a way to pry Jerry Jeudy loose from the Browns for a day to maybe a 3rd round pick.
I think I said it with Anthony. Just redo the Amari Cooper trade. And
then I would still draft a wide receiver in the 1st round. And now I've spent $7.5, maybe $8 million of 2026 draft or cap space on 2 wide receivers
from the 1st round
who will upgrade my team, who will undoubtedly upgrade my football team. I don't understand why that's not the play for the Buffalo Bills. And that's why I think more people aren't talking about. I'm not interested in arguing about Rashid Shaheed. I want to talk about why you don't want to get guys who have done the job and done it well, done it at a Pro Bowl caliber level, done it at a 1,000-yard in a season level. I don't care if he was getting force fed. Doesn't matter. We'll force feed him. Come here and Josh Allen will give you the ball 10 times a game. It's this kind of thing where I think Beane has to at least explore that. Because that's how you win with the Buffalo Bills this year. You now preserve your cap space so that you can go out and sign an Ellis. You can go out and get the Leo Chenal that Anthony Prohaska says this defense so desperately needs. You can still afford a Roy Lopez. You can build out a team with 6, 7, 8 value signings and still upgrade every single position. You just have to be willing to have those negotiations and maybe overpay. If they tell you they want your 2nd round pick for Jerry Jeudy, it's tough. If they told you they want your 1st round pick next year and a day 3 pick this year for Brian Thomas Jr., okay, that's the cost of doing business. If I want a guy who I think can get 1,200 yards in a season, and you do it willingly, because it's still better than paying a Juwan Jennings or a Rashid Shaheed or a Romeo Dobbs and just hoping they become someone who in 4 years in the NFL, they've proven they're not. Guys, our shot song is Ours Bright Side. What the fuck? Mark Sullivan. I love this guy. I like that you showed up to your very first Rockpile Report and were just pissed at me. And now look at you. You fit right in, baby.
He's been here the whole time. He hasn't left.
I love it. This is what the Rockpile Report is all about.
I feel like next week.
Anthony Simonelli, the Jaguars are rumored to want 2 firsts and a premier player. Okay. Well, here's what I'll say. 2 firsts and a premier player for Brian Thomas Jr., a player who you relegated inside your own offense. You can want all you want. What do they say? Shit in one hand, wish in the other, and see which one fills up first?
Yeah.
Well, they can keep wishing.
Well, you can wish in one hand and crap in the other and see which fills first.
It's literally that. I mean, you can want that all you want. That's fine. Then now you're stuck with him. And maybe he turns around and they have 3 ridiculously talented wide receivers. I think that a lot of the Brian Thomas Jr. stuff is just window dressing. I don't think they want to get rid of him, and they'd be idiots for doing so. You'd be capitalizing on a young GM's stupidity if you could get that trade done. It's like fantasy football when the new guy joins the league and doesn't get the mechanics of it. But that's why I think Jerry Jeudy might be the most reasonable thing. Andrew Berry's not a smart GM. Also, Jerry Jeudy is disgruntled and giving them 50% effort. You watched him put up 1,200 yards, and then when they had a year where they had to start 5 different quarterbacks, he was like, you know what, fuck this. I don't care. And he played like he didn't care. That should be a sign to the GM that if somebody's willing to give me a day 2 pick for that guy, I should take my money and run. Because that guy has given up on me. He's given up on my whatever the hell I'm trying to build here. Chris, what are the Browns trying to build?
I don't know. They need to get a fashion guy in there to dress up Todd Monken. It looks like shit.
Didn't he show up to his hiring? First of all, I love that you immediately went fashion because you are our resident fashionista. Isn't it hilarious that he showed up wearing jeans, but like a brown suit coat that clearly came off the rack because it wasn't fitted to him?
Yeah, and his dress shirt was the same. He looked like shit.
He didn't know he was getting hired, or it's one of those things where he was like, all right, well, I'm kind of a farmer. I'm not a football coach. It would be like what I expect a farmer to show up to his first day at an office job. He walked in sneakers, jeans, with an ill-fitting dress shirt and an untailored suit coat. And just walked in and was like, man, this Browns place is pretty nice. You are the quintessential Browns coach. Cleveland deserves you.
Mark wants to know if says Jeudy kind of done, ?
Well, Jeudy was done because he was done with the horse shit. I mean, think about it. Talent like that doesn't evaporate in a young person with no injuries. It's the thing of, hey, I can put up consistent numbers when you give me consistent quarterback play. When I'm energized and I'm focused and I'm looking at like, hey, I'm a part of this thing. When you decide, hey, guess what? We have a star running back and we have a really great tight end in Harold Fannin, and we have multiple quarterbacks who can't throw the ball for shit. You wide receivers are all just kind of fucked. You all have to just exist out here. Meanwhile, the Browns get to go, well, we were technically a football team and we're technically NFL football players. And Jerry Jeudy's walking around going, you idiots, I was great last year. Look at what you've done to me. I'm not doing this. I know how old is he?
26.
26 years old. You mean to tell me that with no major injury history at 26 years old in a 1,200-yard season, you wouldn't give up a day 2 pick for that? You're out of your mind. If you're saying that, you're lying, or you just really don't like Alabama players. I think that's where the smart money lies. And if you did this, then you leave the door open because now you don't have to pay $14 million for a Romeo Doubs or a Rashid Shaheed. And you've already given yourself a wide receiver upgrade. It's $6 million. And if he does well, you hold his rights and can negotiate the extension with him because he's only 26. And now you can go into the draft and say, hey, on day 1, guess what? I'm taking another wide receiver. Or you say, hey, maybe I like Jeremy Bernard. And maybe I say, hey, we didn't get our offensive line in order in free agency. We couldn't parlay that cap space into keeping one of Connor McGovern or David Edwards. Well, guess what? It doesn't matter because the draft is chock full of really good offensive linemen. So we took our first 2 picks and our first 3 picks went like this. Jerry Jeudy trade with our 3rd round pick. In the 2nd round, we took a flyer on a Jeremy Bernard. And in the 1st round, we took a center. Or we took the best guard we could get our hands on because we didn't trust in a Cyrus Torrance situation like a 1st round talent falling to us. No one would be upset by this. I think the catalyst for having the cap space to rebuild this team is a wide receiver trade, not a wide receiver overpay in free agency. I've been saying this for a month and a half, and now after seeing everything coming out of the combine and all the discourse, I believe in it even more. It just upsets me, Chris, because I feel like, and I did say this, you actually put the short out there on YouTube. Brandon Beane is going to try to be aggressive, even if it's not the right thing to do. Even if it's not right, he will try to be aggressive.
I mean, I'm not for being... When it comes to free agency, I would rather him not do anything at wide receiver. Because in history, how has Josh Palmer worked out? Not very good. How has Curtis Samuel worked out? Not very good. He does not have the track record of being able to sign free agent wide receivers. I would rather double dip in the draft and, maybe in the first round, take a Weller 107 wide receiver and then come back in the fourth round with, one of these. That's what I would do if I'm Bean. I don't want him.
Bring that seal box over here.
All right.
Hell yeah. Guys, I just want to say this as we close out tonight's show. Thank you for sticking with us throughout what has to be some of the worst parts of the offseason. All right. Like everybody loves the prognostication portion of this. Everybody loves the, who are we going to sign? Let's do player profiles, which I have no time for. I'm sorry. I don't know. I have a life. I like to sleep. I don't need to pretend that I care about these things. What I will say is I genuinely believe in my heart of hearts that if Bean is able to get a trade done rather than spending the Bills' money in free agency, we'll come out of this thing a winner. If we don't and we overpay on one of these free agents, it's not the end of the world. But it means that the job became much harder. Everything got harder because you got a mediocre talent similar to what you could have traded for, but probably less. And now you saved your draft capital, but now you have to be aggressive with your draft capital. You don't have that draft. You don't have the cap space out there to say, hey, I want to go and I want to get an Ellis at linebacker. Caden Ellis. I want to go get a Leo Chenal. I want to go get a, who's the safety that we talked to with him about?
I don't remember.
No one remembers. Nothing. That's the beauty of the Rockpile Report.
It doesn't matter.
We drink enough that we don't remember the last week's conversation, and it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, to fill the holes they have to fill, to do the things they have to do, to answer all the questions that the Bills roster still has, it's going to take money. And in order to do that, if you overpay the wide receiver position just to mollify a fan base, then you're a bad GM. I don't think Brandon Beane is a bad GM. But I need him to show me that he's got a little savvy, that he's still got some tricks up his sleeve, and that what we've seen from the last couple of years, because somebody said it in the comments earlier, because go back up. This, who said the ridiculous overpays? Yeah, the overindulgence on drafting defense last season was absurd.
Sean Delvin.
Yeah, and now you're paying for it because your scheme is changing, and now you need new things on defense. And so you're going to have to spend. Would you rather try to go fix your defense in the draft, or would you rather go sign guys who you've seen do the jobs that you know you need? I would caution Bills fans who want to see an offensive explosion in free agency. If Bean is smart, he will spend on defense. He will spend on defense.
Andre Sisco was the safety per Roy Collins. God.
It's just
Roy Collins, what are you doing next Thursday? We're gonna need a new host.
We're gonna need a new host. It's so bad. I'm fascinated with what's going to take place over the next week, especially while I'm away.
Yeah, well, let's get this out. So we're off until next Thursday. Is the day we'll do 48 hours after free agency begins. I don't know what your thoughts are. Maybe next Thursday, if it works out, maybe Mark Sullivan should meet Doug Roloski.
You want to get a Doug Roloski?
You want to get Doug in here next week?
Mark, you want to hear stories? I've almost been stabbed. Doug loves to tell that one. It's just a lot.
The best Doug story everyone knows.
Well, Mark Sullivan, can he fit? Barely.
Yeah. Barely. If there's
sorry, Doug, I love you.
If there's any story that Doug Roloski crushes on this story, it's Drew Gear naked on the couch with a roast beef sandwich on his chest.
You know, you grow up with some guys and they know everything about you, and then they weaponize that for the rest of your life.
I'll text Doug and see if he's free next Thursday.
Guys, this has been a lot of fun. And I'm happy that I got to do this before I left for the week. Get all these thoughts off my chest before things get out there. This is what I want. This is what I want to see. I have no hope that they'll do what's intelligent here because I've given up. I've given up on trying to talk the Bills into sense or reasonability because I've been burned too many times on mediocre wide receivers. I'm no longer in that camp where I want to live there. I would rather see you get creative. And even if it means, let's say the Browns drive a hard bargain and they want your second round pick. I still think you give it to them. Why? Because who's your second round pick going to be? Jeremy Bernard. Is Jeremy Bernard going to potentially give you 1,200 yards next season? No. Okay, then that's all I need to know. Then I give my second round pick for that for a 26-year-old. You have future, you have runway, you have things at your disposal. There's multiple players, not just him, but there's other trade targets out there. I think this is where Bean's going to have to put on a master class. And I'm fascinated to see how he remakes this team this offseason because he's got how many years left? Josh just turned 30, just had his first kid. How long does Josh have left in his prime?
8 years.
8 years? Prime?
Yeah.
Prime running quarterback years are much shorter.
Who just won the MVP?
Matt Stafford.
And how old is he?
He was never the runner that Josh is.
He's 38, I believe. So there you go. Josh is going to play at this level until 38 or 39.
You're out of your mind.
Or we might just trade him in a Matthew Stafford way where he sees the light at 35, 36 and goes, I ain't fucking winning here. And then he asks for a trade and then we get caught in like a Jared Goff, Matt Stafford type trade in 6 years.
Well, no, you won't have to worry about that because I'll burn that brand new stadium to the ground. I think they have problems with construction workers graffitiing things now. Just wait till what happens when you trade Josh Allen with no Super Bowl 1 year. Oh, the things I'm about to say on a recorded thing that will inevitably find its way into the hands of law enforcement. Guys, I'm excited and nervous, and this is the first offseason where I really don't know what the hell they're thinking. I can't wait. I can't wait to see because now that Brandon Beane has seen the light, I'm hoping, and knows that he doesn't have forever, knows that his job is not, he's not invincible. He's just lucky he dodged the bullet. He caught a promotion. He managed to get out of the way. Doesn't mean he won't be excused. It doesn't mean that if this doesn't go well, if this draft doesn't land, if next season goes just as poorly or God forbid worse, right? Because nobody's been enamored by what they've heard from Joe Brady. Have you, Chris?
No. Good things is happening.
Good things is happening, guys. Don't worry. Joe Brady, good things is happening. If this all goes sideways, I could see a lot of people getting fired. I just think that there's a lot that hangs in the balance of this innocuous free agency trade period, and we have to play this correctly. I'm fascinated with what this front office is going to cook up. And if it's underwhelming, then I feel like not only will they know that, they'll feel it, they'll hear it. Chris, the Sabres fans over the last decade have done a good job of letting the Pagulas know how they feel about this.
Yes.
And yet for some reason, the only one he cares about is this thing because it's the thing that makes him rich. So if this guy has a bad offseason and rocks the boat, I could see a world where Brandon Beane's also gone. I could. It makes it easier to remove a guy who's no longer your GM. He's your president of operations. I fired... Chris, we did a whole podcast about all the executives he's fired. We did a whole show about it before Pete Gwaley. He's had to fire more than half a dozen senior executives over the last 5 years for gross misconduct. This one, he could finally say he was justified. He's like, hey, I hired the wrong guy. Again, shocker, we fire him. I think they're in for it. Guys, You guys, I'm too used to being disappointed. So free agency of the draft, good or bad, is just a thing by Roy Collins. That's it. And now we sit back and we wait. I appreciate you guys letting me get this off my chest. Thank you for showing up and participating. But we got to get the hell out of here. I'm Drew Gear. That's Chris Kruger. And this has been your Rockpile Report.